Hey, buddy, Halloween is over. You can't wear that costume in a secure zone.
This is a uniform, officer. I am active duty, waiting for transport.
Don't give me that. You look like stolen valor to me. Let's see ID.
My ID's in my pocket. Do not touch my medals.
I said hands on the wall. Stop resisting.
Officer, you are making a career-ending mistake.
Hey, Halloween's over. Take that costume off or you're going in cuffs. Gavin Sutton's voice cut through the airport curbside like a siren sharp in public, and it landed on Tyrone Johnson as if Tyrone had been assigned the role of criminal in a scene already decided. Tyrone didn't step back fast enough for Sutton's taste. Sutton stepped in closer instead, crowding Tyrone's chest with a badge and an ego. Tyrone's left shoulder tightened. His jaw worked once slow. He kept his hands open visible like he'd done 1,000 times in training and 100 times in airports. Sir, this isn't a costume. I'm active duty. I'm waiting for my ride. Within days, that claim would collapse under its own weight. And Sutton, who thought he was putting on a show of control, would find out what it feels like when the system finally decides to watch him back. Sutton's eyes flicked up and down the dress blues like he was scanning for weaknesses. You people always think a uniform makes you untouchable. He said not a slur, but coded a sneer dressed up as standards. Stand over there, now, and don't reach for anything. That single sentence would be repeated later word for word. Tyrone didn't move yet. Not because he didn't want to, because leaving wasn't as simple as turning around. His sea bag sat by his boot, and his phone, his only contact with the driver he'd been directed to meet, was in his jacket pocket. If he walked off, the ride could miss him, and then the next step was not minor inconvenience. The next step was missed orders, missed reporting, missed time that someone else would have to explain. He swallowed once. Am I free to leave? Sutton's mouth twitched. Not until I say you are. A couple rolling suitcases slowed. A rideshare driver leaned on his door and watched. A woman with a lanyard and an airport-issued jacket paused near a pillar, her eyes moving between Sutton's hands and Tyrone's collar. Tyrone kept his voice even. What's the reason for detaining me? Sutton answered with what he thought was certainty. Stolen valor? Fake uniform? Suspicious behavior? I'm not arguing. Show me ID. Tyrone shifted his weight carefully, making no sudden movements. My ID is in my pocket. I'm going to reach slowly if you let me. Don't tell me how to do my job, Sutton snapped, and then he crossed the line fast like he wanted the moment before anyone could think. His hand shot out and grabbed the front of Tyrone's dress blue's fingers, curling into fabric near the medals, as if the cloth itself had offended him. Tyrone's breath caught in his throat, dry mouth, heat in his face. The grab wasn't just contact. It was humiliation. It was a stranger yanking at earned symbols in a public place. Tyrone's voice lowered. Do not touch my ribbons. Sutton tightened his grip instead, jerking Tyrone half a step forward. Or what you gonna threaten me, costume boy? Phones rose. Not dramatically, not like a movie, just quietly the way people do now when they sense a line being crossed and don't trust memory to hold the truth. A tall man in a baseball cap angled his camera toward Sutton's hands. A middle-aged woman with a backpack held her phone at chest height steady. Sutton noticed, and for a split second it threw him off. Then he doubled down. Hands on the wall, Sutton barked. Now, don't resist. I'm not resisting, Tyrone said immediately. I'm requesting a supervisor. Sutton's smile showed teeth. Supervisor doesn't change what you are. Tyrone stared straight ahead, not at Sutton's eyes, but just past them the way you look through smoke. Sir, if you keep your hands on me, you are making a serious mistake. Sutton leaned in close enough that the Bodycam on his chest caught the edge of Tyrone's breath. Here's the deal, Sutton said, voice rising for the audience he'd accidentally created. I decide what's real, and right now, that uniform isn't. The viral quote landed clean and ugly, I decide what's real. It would come back later like a boomerang. Tyrone placed one palm against the pillar beside him, not a wall, but close enough to satisfy the command without giving Sutton the satisfaction of full compliance theater. His other hand stayed open at his side. Please state the reason again for the record, he said, calm measured. For the record, Sutton mocked. Listen to this guy. A new sound pushed in an airport shuttle's backup beep, a wave of engine noise, and for a second the words blurred. Tyrone turned his head slightly, trying to hear Sutton's next command clearly. Sutton took the head turn as defiance. Stop moving, he said, and shoved Tyrone's shoulder harder than necessary. The woman in the airport jacket stepped forward half a pace. He's not resisting. She said loud enough to be useful, calm enough to be credible. He asked why. Sutton snapped his head toward her. Ma'am, keep walking. She didn't. Not fully. She held her ground in that subtle way people do when they don't want to be next, but also don't want to abandon someone. I'm airport ops, she said, and lifted her lanyard without theatrics. You're escalating. Sutton looked at the lanyard and then ignored it like it didn't fit the story he'd started. "This is law enforcement," he said. "Back up." Tyrone didn't take the bait. "I'm requesting a supervisor," he repeated, "and I do not consent to being searched." Sutton's hand moved toward Tyrone's pocket anyway, and Tyrone's muscles went rigid, not to fight, but because every instinct in him knew what this moment could turn into if Sutton decided to interpret tension as aggression. The tall man in the baseball cap spoke up, voice steady. "Officer, he's telling you where his ID is. Let him do it." Sutton turned eyes hard. "You want to be part of this? Keep filming. It'll look great when I trespass all of you." That was the first micro-turn Sutton expanded the target. He tried to make the circle collapse by threatening the witnesses. The circle tightened instead. A second phone appeared from the left, then a third. No shouting. Just quiet recording, calm narration, the pressure of attention. Tyrone's breathing slowed 4 counts in 4 counts out. He'd learned that in places that didn't have curbside drop-offs and luggage carts. He'd learned it when fear tried to climb into his throat and make decisions for him. He wasn't just any traveler. Tyrone Johnson was the guy in his unit who never forgot a detail, the one who checked gear twice, and still helped someone else check theirs. He had a habit of folding receipts into his passport sleeve and keeping a small black notebook with mission notes and contacts in the inside pocket of his bag. His watch was set to a second time zone out of instinct, and the edge of his thumbnail was bitten down from the flight, old anxiety controlled, never fully gone. He'd spent years earning the right to wear those ribbons, and now a stranger's fingers were pinching them like they were props. Sutton spoke into his shoulder radio, voice clipped. "Need a unit curbside. Possible stolen valor, non-compliant." Non-compliant. Tyrone felt the word hit him like a tag that could stick if no one peeled it off. "Say again," crackled back, faintly. The reception was bad airport metal and concrete, swallowing half the transmission. The second imperfection landed. Sutton didn't get the clean response he wanted. It delayed help. It also made him angrier because nothing makes a controlling person more reckless than a system that doesn't immediately echo their authority. Sutton grabbed Tyrone's collar again harder, yanking him closer, as if proximity could replace verification. "Empty your pockets," he ordered. "Now." Tyrone didn't move. "Am I under arrest?" Sutton's eyes flashed. "Do you want to be?" "I'm not resisting," Tyrone said again. "I'm asking for a supervisor." Sutton's gaze slid to the phones. He pointed at the tall man. "Turn that off." The tall man didn't flinch. "No. I'm documenting. You're putting hands on him." That witness line, simple factual, became a stabilizer. It made it harder for Sutton to rewrite the scene in real time. A rideshare driver stepped out of his car, broad shoulders, work vest. "Man, let him show you his ID," the driver said. "This ain't right." Sutton rounded on him. "Get back in your vehicle." The driver hesitated. That tiny hesitation, fear of tickets, fear of losing access to the pickup zone, was the first crack of social friction. People wanted to help, but they had something to lose. And Sutton knew it. Back in the car, Sutton repeated slower, like he was training an animal. "Or you're done working this airport." The driver's hands rose in surrender. "I'm backing up," he said, voice tight. "I'm just saying." "Back up," Sutton snapped. Tyrone watched that moment and felt the isolation Sutton was trying to manufacture. If everyone stepped away, the story would become whatever Sutton wrote into it. So Tyrone did the only thing he could without escalating. He made the record. "Your name and badge," he said. Sutton smiled without warmth. "Not a request you get to make." Tyrone looked past Sutton to the airport ops woman. "Ma'am, please, can you call your supervisor? I need a witness." She nodded once quick and stepped aside to her radio. Sutton saw her move and surged, trying to cut it off. "Nobody's calling anybody," he said. But she was already speaking, voice low controlled, and Sutton couldn't snatch the radio from her without looking exactly like what he was. That was micro turn 2. Leadership intercept started to form, not from a hero swooping in, but from a worker who recognized risk and chose accountability over silence. Tyrone kept his palms open. "I'm active duty," he said again, like a fact that shouldn't need repetition. "My ride is assigned. I can have my command verify me." Sutton shook his head. "Everybody's got a story." "And everybody's got a camera," the tall man murmured. Sutton snapped back. "Keep talking, and I'll jam you up, too." Tyrone's voice stayed even. "Sir, do not reach into my pockets." Sutton reached anyway. For a split second, Tyrone's body stiffened, shoulders rising. Sutton seized on it. "There it is," Sutton announced to the phones. "Aggressive." "No," the airport ops woman said sharply from the side. "He tensed because you grabbed him." Sutton ignored her. "Hands behind your back," he ordered. This was the point of no return. Sutton had turned a verification request into an attempted restraint in front of witnesses. Tyrone felt a cold wash of adrenaline. The near loss hovered close now cuffs at curbside, a viral clip without context. A report written by the person who caused the problem. He swallowed, forced his hands to stay visible. I'm not resisting, he said louder now, so every phone caught it. I am requesting a supervisor. I am requesting airport security leadership. Sutton's hand went toward his cuffs. A man in a suit creased stepped into the edge of the circle and held up his own phone like a badge. I'm calling airport security now, he said, voice calm. You don't need to do this. Sutton's head snapped. Stay out of it. The suited man didn't argue. He just spoke into the phone. Yes, curbside. An officer is grabbing a uniformed service member. It's escalating. Sutton stared at him, then back at Tyrone. He looked trapped between showing force and being seen showing force. He chose force. Sutton grabbed Tyrone's wrist and tried to pull it behind Tyrone's back. Tyrone's breath hitched. His spine went rigid. His mind ran through the rules like a checklist. Don't fight. Don't give him a clip. Don't give him an excuse. Protect your head. Keep your voice. I'm not resisting, Tyrone said through clenched teeth. You're hurting me. Sutton hissed, stop acting. The tall man narrated steady as a metronome. He's saying he's not resisting. You're twisting his arm. Another voice joined a woman's firm. Let go of him. That's not necessary. Sutton bared his teeth. Back up. The circle didn't back up. It didn't rush Sutton either. It just held a witness ring phone's out calm narration, collective pressure. SE05 in real life, a witness circle that doesn't do violence, doesn't do heroics, just refuses to let the truth be alone. Tyrone's face burned. Not from pain alone, from the insult of being treated like a liar in the uniform he'd bled for, and that humiliation cracked open a memory he usually kept sealed. Backstory insert 1 came in small sharp flashes. Tyrone at a kitchen table years ago double-checking bills with his mother's tired hands nearby. Tyrone taking an extra shift for someone else because childcare fell through. Tyrone learning early that reliability wasn't a personality trait, it was a survival strategy. He was the man people called when something had to be done right because he didn't have the luxury of being sloppy. Now Sutton was trying to paint him as sloppy. Fake. Less than. Tyrone held his voice steady anyway. Sir, you need to verify before you put cuffs on me. Sutton spat the words like they tasted bad. I already verified. I verified with my eyes. I decide what's real. Sutton added almost to himself, as if repeating it would make it true. That was micro turn 3. Sutton committed to the viral quote cementing his own future problem. A new set of footsteps approached fast. 2 airport security officers appeared from the terminal side dark uniforms radio's posture that suggested they'd been called into risk not routine. One of them, a woman with a tight bun and a calm face, held her hand out. What's going on here, she asked. Sutton didn't release Tyrone's wrist. Stolen valor. He's non-compliant. Tyrone turned his head slightly toward her. Ma'am, I'm requesting your supervisor. I am active duty. My ID is in my pocket and he won't let me retrieve it safely. The security officer's eyes went to Sutton's grip. Officer, can you release his arm so he can present identification? Sutton's jaw tightened. No, he'll run. Tyrone didn't even laugh at how absurd it was. He just said, where would I run to? The security officer didn't argue. She glanced at her partner. Call our supervisor. Sutton snapped, this is police business. The security officer held eye contact. This is our curbside, and right now it's a liability. That single word liability shifted the air. It wasn't moral judgment. It was institutional language. It signaled that someone in the room was thinking past ego. Sutton finally loosened his grip just a little. Tyrone used the slack carefully. I'm going to reach for my ID slowly, he said. Tell me if you want me to stop. Sutton hovered close, ready to snatch control back. Tyrone slid 2 fingers into his pocket and pulled out his military ID with a slow, deliberate motion. He held it up not toward Sutton's hand, but toward the security officer's line of sight. Sutton didn't look at it. He refused the proof. DV1 landed in front of everyone's selective proof rejection. Sutton couldn't accept the ID because acceptance would end his performance. That could be fake, Sutton said immediately. The security officer's brows rose slightly. We can verify, she said. Sutton scoffed. Not needed. Tyrone kept his ID visible. His voice was quiet, controlled, and dangerous in its calm. Sir, you grabbed my ribbons. You tried to cuff me. In front of witnesses. Please state your reason again. Sutton snapped, my reason is you. Micro turn 4, Sutton made it personal, and the crowd reacted to the nakedness of it. The tall man's voice sharpened. That's not a reason. A woman with a backpack spoke careful but firm. You didn't even look at his ID. Sutton pointed at her. You move along. She didn't. No, she said. Not while you're grabbing him. The airport security supervisor arrived male, older. Calm eyes, the kind of person who'd seen tantrums in uniform and didn't feed them. He stopped at the edge of the circle and assessed the scene in one sweep. Sutton too close. Tyrone stiff but controlled multiple phones up two security officers holding a boundary. What's the situation? The supervisor asked. Sutton launched into his narrative faster now, trying to outrun the truth. He's wearing a fake uniform. He's refusing commands. He's causing a scene. Tyrone spoke next, not louder, just clear. He approached me and accused me. He grabbed my collar and my ribbons. I asked if I was free to leave. He said no. I asked for a supervisor. He attempted to cuff me before verifying my ID. The supervisor looked at Sutton. Did you verify his identity? Sutton's eyes flicked to the phones again. He tensed up. He was aggressive. The supervisor didn't bite. That's not verification. Sutton tried to regain ground. He's suspicious. The supervisor said, we can verify. Step back. Sutton didn't step back. That was micro turn 5, institutional boundary met individual ego, and ego refused. The supervisor's voice dropped firm. Officer Sutton, step back. Sutton stared at him like he couldn't believe anyone would command him. Then he shifted half a step barely. Tyrone exhaled slowly, the first full breath he'd taken in minutes. And then the near loss tried to return. A second police unit arrived, younger officer, uncertain posture. Sutton turned toward him with relief backup. Cuff him, Sutton ordered. He's non-compliant. The younger officer hesitated. His eyes went to Tyrone's uniform, then to the ID held up, then to the security officers and the phones. He looked like a man choosing between loyalty to a senior and loyalty to evidence. SF3 crept an internal split. Not every supervisor wanted sunlight. Some wanted quiet. The younger officer asked, "What's the charge?" Sutton snapped, "I said stolen valor." The younger officer swallowed. "Do we have verification he's not military?" Sutton's face hardened. "Do you want to question me in front of civilians?" The supervisor stepped in, intercepting. "Nobody is cuffing anyone until verification happens," he said. "This is airport property. We're handling it with coordination." Sutton's nostrils flared. "You can't tell me." "I can," the supervisor said, and his tone wasn't emotional. It was procedural. "Because this scene is escalating and you're in it." Then he turned to Tyrone. "Sir, do you have orders or a contact who can confirm you?" Tyrone nodded. "Yes, my command duty officer, and my right is assigned." The supervisor gestured to an airport desk officer nearby. "Get dispatch on the line for verification. Now." Documentary Anchor 1 appeared inside the active scene, clean and plain. Sutton's body-worn camera was still recording its small red indicator, visible when he shifted his chest toward the circle, and more than one witness pointed at it, as if to say quietly that the truth was already being captured. "Source." Sutton noticed the pointing and stiffened. The supervisor didn't look away. "Officer Sutton," he said, "I'm asking you one time. Stand down." Sutton's mouth tightened. He's lying. Tyrone's shoulders rose and fell, controlled. "Verify me," he said. "That's all I've asked." The airport ops woman returned breath slightly fast. "My manager's coming," she said. "And I've got the curbside camera feed queued." Sutton snapped toward her. "That's not necessary." "It is," she replied. Sutton's eyes narrowed. "You're making this complicated." Tyrone said quietly, "You made it complicated when you grabbed me." Another micro-turn, the curbside camera feed, mention shifted Sutton from in control to on record. The supervisor's radio crackled. "Ops manager en route." The younger officer cleared his throat. "Sutton, maybe we should just verify." Sutton shot him a look that could freeze water. "Stay in your lane." The younger officer looked away. Fear won that micro-battle. Co-worker fear wasn't on Tyrone's side, but it was present in the system, and Sutton used it like a tool. Tyrone felt the danger of the moment. Sutton might still cuff him just to save face, then claim resisting when Tyrone reacted to pain. That was the near loss made real. Tyrone didn't try to walk away. Why not just leave? Because Sutton had already said he wasn't free to go, and because turning his back could trigger exactly the kind of he's fleeing justification Sutton wanted. Also because Tyrone needed the ride coordination and to avoid a spiral that could swallow his orders. So Tyrone stayed still, hands visible. "Am I free to leave?" Tyrone asked again, calm. Sutton answered no. And that word hung in the air like a confession. The supervisor turned his head slightly, as if committing it to memory. The tall man's phone captured it clean. The ops manager arrived, woman in a blazer airport badge clipped at the waist, the kind of posture that carried meetings and budgets. She took one look at the phones and the cluster, and immediately understood what she was walking into, a scene that could become national attention if handled wrong. "Who's in charge here?" she asked. Sutton stepped forward. "I am." The ops manager didn't even glance at his rank. She looked to the airport security supervisor. "Who called me?" He nodded. "I did." She turned back to Sutton. Step aside. Sutton's face reddened. This is curbside operations and risk, she said, voice clipped. And it's now my problem. That was micro turn 6, risk management language arrived, and Sutton's street dominance stopped working. Tyrone held his ID up again. Ma'am, I'm active duty, he said. I'm trying to meet my assigned ride. The ops manager's gaze softened for half a second, just long enough to show she saw him as a person, not a narrative. Then she became a professional again. We will verify you, she said, and we will de-escalate this. Sutton scoffed. He's playing you. The ops manager said, Officer, stop talking. Sutton blinked, stunned by the directness. A desk officer on speakerphone announced, We have someone from military liaison on the line. The audio crackled bad reception again, forcing them to repeat. It slowed the process, and Sutton tried to exploit the delay, pacing like a caged animal. Tyrone stood still, shoulders tight, the burn of anger pressed down by discipline. He felt sweat at the base of his neck cold, despite the heat of humiliation. Backstory inserts 2 arrived in a quick, controlled dose. Tyrone on a second job years ago, before enlistment stocking shelves late night, then showing up to morning obligations without complaining. Tyrone sending money home without announcing it. Tyrone choosing a path where the rules at least were supposed to matter. He had believed structure could protect dignity. Today, structure had worn a badge and grabbed his collar. Put the liaison on, the ops manager ordered. A calm voice came through the speaker. This is military liaison. Who am I speaking with? The ops manager introduced herself by role. We have a uniformed service member being detained curbside. We need identity confirmation. Tyrone spoke, giving his name and unit information without sensitive numbers, controlled professional. Sutton interrupted. Ask him where he bought the medals. The ops manager cut him off. Officer, you are not speaking. The liaison responded, We can confirm he is assigned an active. He should not be detained unless there is a separate reason. Sutton's face hardened. That doesn't prove. It does, the ops manager said. Sutton's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around for allies and found none. The witness circle held. Phones stayed raised. No cheering, no shouting, just steady pressure. Documentary Anchor 2 appeared inside the scene. Plain and decisive. The airport security desk acknowledged that the call and escalation had been logged in real time, with names taken verbally as the situation unfolded, so the timeline wouldn't depend on anyone's memory later. Source. That was the moment Sutton seemed to understand he couldn't unmake what had been recorded. He tried anyway. He was still non-compliant, Sutton said, voice softer, now trying to reposition. He didn't obey commands. The ops manager looked at Tyrone's hands, still open, still visible. Then she looked at Sutton's posture, tense, defensive. Non-compliant would have been fighting, she said. He requested a supervisor. Sutton's jaw worked. He disrespected me. The ops manager replied, He asked if he was free to leave. Sutton's eyes darted to the younger officer, silently demanding support. The younger officer's gaze dropped. Internal split again. The younger officer didn't betray Sutton openly. He just refused to rescue him. The ops manager's voice sharpened. Officer Sutton, you will provide your information to airport security and leave curbside. Now, Sutton stiffened. You can't order me off a law enforcement scene. The security supervisor stepped forward half a step. We can remove you from our property access if you're creating a safety risk, he said, and we will coordinate with your watch commander. There it was, institutional backbone forming, not vengeance, just procedure and authority applied correctly. Sutton's cheeks flushed. He looked at Tyrone as if Tyrone had done this to him. Tyrone didn't gloat. He just asked softly, Am I free to leave now? The ops manager answered immediately. Yes. Tyrone's shoulders dropped a fraction. It was the first visible release he'd allowed himself. He picked up his sea bag, fingers steady with effort, and stepped back from Sutton's reach. Sutton watched him move away and suddenly tried to reclaim narrative in one last swing. You're lucky, Sutton muttered. Tyrone turned his head just enough. No, he said. I'm documented. A quiet fell over the curbside. This was the freeze moment, phones held steady, witnesses' silent eye contact locked. Sutton's face shifted as if he could feel the scene turning against him, not because Tyrone threatened him, but because Tyrone named the truth in one clean word. Documented. Sutton looked at the phones. He looked at the ops manager. He looked at the security supervisor. And for the first time, he recalculated. The ops manager spoke into her radio. Contact police supervisor on duty. Request response to curbside. Incident review and separation. Sutton snapped, This is bull. Officer, the security supervisor said, Step back. Sutton's voice rose, trying to create chaos as cover. You're all making a big deal out of nothing. The tall man in the baseball cap answered calm. You grabbed him. That's not nothing. The woman with the backpack added quietly, You didn't even look at his ID. Sutton looked like he wanted to lash out again, but every angle was covered now. A sergeant arrived, stocky, calm eyes scanning the phones and the security leadership first, then Sutton. He spoke to Sutton with the tone of a man who had cleaned up messes like this before. Sutton, over here. Sutton tried to posture. Sarge, he's... The sergeant held up a hand. Not here, over here. Sutton hesitated, then moved. Tyrone stood a few steps away, bag at his feet, hands still visible by habit. The ops manager approached him with a different tone than Sutton's. Sir, she said, are you injured? My arm's sore, Tyrone admitted. He grabbed my collar and ribbons. The ops manager nodded. We can get medical to assess you, and we will take statements. Tyrone's throat tightened. I just need to make my ride. We'll coordinate that, she said. The airport ops woman returned eyes bright with controlled anger. Your ride is at lane 3, she told Tyrone. I called them. They're waiting. Tyrone exhaled. A small thing. A huge thing. Control returned through logistics. Across the curb, Sutton spoke to the sergeant, voice low, now defensive. The sergeant listened, then looked past Sutton to Tyrone, then to the witness circle. He didn't argue with the crowd. He asked for facts. Who saw first contact, he asked. Hands rose, not in a frenzy, but in an orderly offering of truth. The tall man pointed at his phone. I did. He grabbed him first. The woman with the backpack said he accused him before he asked anything. The airport ops woman added, he refused to verify the ID. The sergeant nodded slowly, like each statement stacked into a shape he couldn't ignore. Sutton tried one more time. They're civilians. They don't understand procedure. The sergeant answered procedure includes verification, and it includes keeping your hands to yourself unless you have reason. Sutton's eyes narrowed. So you're taking their side? The sergeant replied, I'm taking the side of what we can confirm. Then he spoke a sentence that sounded like a door closing. You're being relieved from this scene. Sutton's face twisted. For what? Doing my job. The sergeant said, we'll review. We'll review. Not instant justice, not cinematic punishment, but the real beginning of consequences. Tyrone was escorted, not detained toward the waiting vehicle lane by an airport security officer. The witness circle loosened, people returning to their lives with the quiet satisfaction of knowing they had held a line. Before Tyrone got into the vehicle, the ops manager gave him a card with a direct line and an incident intake email. We're going to preserve what we have, she said, and we will coordinate with your command if needed. Tyrone nodded. Thank you. He got into the vehicle sea bag at his feet. His hands trembled slightly for the first time now that the danger had moved away. He pressed his palms against his thighs until the shaking stopped. The driver asked, you, okay? Tyrone stared out the window. I will be, he said. The next day, the calls started. Not from social media first, from institutions that understood risk. A watch commander reached out to airport leadership. Airport security leadership requested the recordings. The LPS manager sent a memo to city risk management. Legal counsel got involved not to threaten anyone, but to ensure the evidence was preserved and the response was consistent. Tyrone's command reached out through liaison channels demanding clarity, not drama. They didn't need to scream. Their seriousness carried weight by default. Within the week, Sutton's own words were repeated back to him. In a review meeting, the sergeant quoted the line, exactly because a witness had captured it clean, I decide what's real. The room went quiet again. The second freeze later, institutional. The watch commander looked at Sutton and said, that's what you said. Sutton's mouth opened, then closed. He tried to argue context, but context had been recorded. Airport leadership issued a formal apology to Tyrone, written direct acknowledging improper treatment without hiding behind vague phrases. Police leadership issued a public statement about standards and accountability without naming every detail because they didn't need to. The story was already out there among the people who'd been on that curbside, and the recordings were already preserved. Training was mandated for Sutton's unit de-escalation verification steps, and bias awareness framed as operational necessity, not moral theater. Sutton was removed from airport detail pending review, and a supervisor who'd previously minimized complaints was reassigned out of a public-facing oversight role. It wasn't a guillotine. It was a slow, procedural dismantling of access. Tyrone received a letter clearing any implication of wrongdoing and institutional restoration of dignity. His command added it to his file so no rumor could metastasize later. And the airport changed its response protocol, curbside faster security supervisor activation, clearer coordination boundaries, and a formal channel to report public authority conflicts on airport property. Not perfect, but improved because people had refused to let the truth be alone. The last conversation Tyrone had about it was short. A senior airport executive spoke to him by phone. I'm sorry we failed you at the curb, she said. Thank you for staying calm. Thank you for letting us correct it. Tyrone's voice was steady. I stayed calm because I didn't want to die over a misunderstanding, he said. Or lose my career because someone needed to win face. There was a pause. Then she said, we understand. Tyrone hung up and sat for a long moment, staring at his dress blues laid neatly across the bed like they were fragile. He touched the ribbons lightly, not to reassure himself they were real, but to remind himself that the uniform didn't protect him. People did. And on that curbside, strangers had chosen to be people. What happened at the curbside wasn't just about one officer's ego. It was about how quickly a false narrative can harden when authority expects obedience more than truth. First, the simplest protective move is to keep your hands visible and use calm, repeatable phrases like, am I free to leave? And I'm requesting a supervisor, because those words create a clear track that witnesses can repeat later. Next, if you can do so, safely make proof pressure real by calmly acknowledging recording devices and encouraging neutral narration from bystander statements like, he's not resisting can matter more than arguing. Then focus on verification instead of debate, ask for identity checks, ask for leadership, and avoid sudden motions that can be misframed as aggression. After the incident, write down what you remember, immediately get contact info for witnesses if available, and request that recordings and statements be preserved through official channels. Finally, follow up with the institution's leadership, not just the individual on scene, because accountability is usually a stepwise process that moves through supervisors' risk management and documentation rather than instant consequences. Some elements are selectively fictionalized for education.